Hi, everybody. I am Jessamyn Shams-Lau, your host today. Welcome to It's Not Your Money, real talk about achieving racial equity in philanthropy. These slightly irreverent and frank conversations feature leaders challenging the status quo of philanthropy today and demonstrating how we can build a more equitable and just funding landscape, particularly for Black, Indigenous, other people of color, women, and non-binary founders. This is going to be a wild ride, my friends. Today, we are looking into the future and talking about the dreams we have for philanthropy, because I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Efrain Gutierrez and Dr. Chera, Reid, two of the leaders behind Freedom Dreams in Philanthropy. Chera, would you mind kicking us off and just telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, and thanks for having us, Jessamyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Chera Reid. I use she, hers pronouns, and a few things to know about me as we jump into today's conversation. I am a mother, so some of my dreams about what could be, what's possible, are rooted firmly in my role as a mother and a mother to boys who are Black African American children in a society and in an educational context that often um, is quick to punish and not see their brilliance. So, a lot of what motivates me in my work is my real belief in education for liberation and my determination to make that real for my children.
Thank you for sharing that, Chera, and welcome.
Thank you.
Efrain, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, depending on where you are. I'm Efrain Gutierrez. I use he and they pronouns. And something to know about me is that I'm a man. And I dream of, I've been going through a personal journey of healing from the, conditioning of patriarchal masculinity. And I dream of a world where men take the time to understand the ways in which patriarchal masculinity hurt them and heal from that, recognize harm to other folks, recognize harm to themselves. And really, I dream of a movement of healing men that come forward and start joining other movements that have come through throughout history in support of our liberation.
Oh, I feel like we need to change our opening intro question and invite people from now on to tell us about their dreams, because those were beautiful. Thank you. It just, wonderfully informative, but also very warm and personal. So thank you so much for sharing those introductions with us, both of you. Okay, before we get into the meat of our conversation, one of the things we remind folks listening through both our title and this opening question is that when we incorrectly label the money in foundations, in donor advised funds as still belonging to the founders of those vehicles, then we also act like the money and the foundation or the donor advised fund still belong to them, which perpetuates the concentration of power. So the point there is words influence who holds power. So my opening question for both of you, and Chera, I invite you to go first. What shift in language do you want to see us, and you can define us in any way you choose, what shift in language would you like to see us make that you believe would help us diversify power?
Yes. The shift I would like to see is away from the language of either or. We must choose one or the other, toward a language of both and. What I have seen, particularly in the more progressive spaces within US philanthropy, is a big pendulum shift from strategic philanthropy, top down hierarchical, to a kind of philanthropy that says, give the money, less of me, let me get out of the way. And I believe there's a both and that can be really glossed over and lost and forgotten when we default to binaries. When this work, the work of collective liberation, the work toward justice, is work for all of us.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's very thought-provoking. How about you?
I love that. I would say it's an invitation to move from our impact or our vision, when foundations and founders talk about centering just what in the individual or the individual organization is doing, to thinking more expansively about what our, like the plural we means, and really thinking about a positionality around where are we in terms of the movements and the people that have sacrificed and have done progress towards justice before us, and where is the contribution to that we want to make, knowing that at the very end it might not even look like impact. It's just passing it to the next generation, knowing that we will continue to push towards the ideals that and the things that we deserve and that we dream of. So I would offer that change to say from our impact to our contribution to a collective vision.
I love that, and I think it invites us to think about our role as being something beyond, something larger than the organization that we work for, or the job title that we currently hold, right? It invites us to think about our contribution across a career, across a life, across the industry that we're all invested in, the communities, the society that we're all invested in as well. Thank you. Okay, so changing track. So before we look forward to the dreams for philanthropy, let's just ground the conversation in the history that brought you both to Freedom Dreams in Philanthropy. So when I headed to your website, I learned that the roots of freedom dreaming itself are found in Black-led US social movements and Black feminist thought, which I didn't know before. I was ignorant to that, and I was really excited to learn that. It just felt it seems incredibly cohesive and just very appropriate. And so I would just thinking about that that origin of the process of freedom dreaming. Can you tell us a bit more about the history of freedom dreaming and philanthropy, and maybe if there's more that you'd like to add around freedom dreaming in general, and how those origins show up or shape the work that you do today as part of your collaborative?
Yes. So freedom dreaming is a long-standing concept and construct. It was given that name just over 20 years ago. It's coming from, as you said, largely US social movements that have been Black-led, and also coming from the work of artists, visionaries, who understood that the way that we create the world that we want to live in is finding, as we can, and struggling for, in the political sense, free spaces where we come in to experiment, to workshop, to practice that which we want to live. And so it's important to know the word dreaming here is not the same thing as dreaming like when you're sleeping, or REM dreaming, if you will. It's not a sort of fluffy thing. It's really, this is used in a political and in a visionary context, and coming from a long lineage of people who said, to be in the body that I am in a society that has a racial hierarchy, a class hierarchy, a gender hierarchy, is fundamentally unsafe. We think about Black feminist thought. Much of the work was about Black women naming and claiming our right to exist in the bodies that we have and the bodies as we are, and not needing to make any apology for being who we are and as we are, and fundamentally needing to be seen and protected equally under the law, which is work that still continues, of course.
Right.
And so what we are rooting in with Freedom, Dreams, and Philanthropy is that long history of visionary work, of organizing and experimenting with the future that we're trying to create. One that is inclusive, one that is just, one where everyone has the conditions met so that they might thrive, and whatever that vision, that understanding of thriving is, right? And so we understand that in this work, Black liberation is connected to queer liberation, is connected to abolition. These are all, they're all sort of in the same. They all are struggles that must be really freedom dreamed into and experimented in with, and lots of learning to happen, and continuing to build and to move and to shift. And so with Freedom, Dreams, and Philanthropy, what we did was we really inquired, like, what would happen if leaders of color, in this case, CEOs, executive directors of color, and US foundations were invited to share their visions, invited into their radical imaginations? Could we hear, and would people be willing to go there to share with us what they're really dreaming about? Not what their organizational mission statement says, although those could be, they're definitely in dialogue and relationship. But what is it that they dream about? What is bringing them into their work? What is keeping them in their work? And moreover, what do they dream about? What does that look like? What does it sound like? Who's there? Who's not there? And so in this work, part of what we've done through the research that we've already conducted is really here a proof of concept that freedom dreaming is an anchoring concept. It is a concept that resonates with leaders of color and philanthropic organizations. When invited to speak and to come as they are, leaders pick that challenge, that invitation up, and they go there. They want to go there. And that was not something that we would just assume is. We actually hadn't tested this concept specifically in the sector in this way. And then related to that, we've been asking, well, how do we create spaces to really increase freedom dreaming? Freedom dreaming as conversation, yes, as visioning and collective visioning, and freedom dreaming really moreover as praxis. So freedom dreaming is a verb rather than a noun. It is an anchoring concept, yes. It really is about the process, the doing, and being in it.
Chera, when you were describing the process of executive directors and leaders in philanthropy coming into that space of radical imagination, my heart was a little bit lighter. And I think it's because I spent about 11 years as an executive director, running a foundation as a woman of color. And just as I heard you describe that process, there was just like this sense of relief and a sense of power and hope that these spaces exist that I would have loved to have been part of when I was in that position. Like I really hope that experience is resonating with other people who are listening too, because I think that's one of the beautiful things about what it is that you're doing is that it is inherently joyful, what you're describing. Even though the need for it comes from a place that is less joyful, the orientation is joy and hope and recreation.
It is.
Thank you.
There is joy in liberation and freedom. Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything else, Efrain?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I think for me, as Chera made the invitation to join this work, I think there is a quote from Robin DiGiacelli that we use in our materials that really, for me, kind of like let me know that this was something that was very important for philanthropy. So I want to bring Dr. Robin DiGiacelli, who wrote Freedom Dreams, the Black Radical Imagination, the book that our work is inspired by. The quote says, "Without new visions, we don't know what to build, only what to knock down. We not only end up confused, ruthless, and cynical, but we forget that making a revolution is not a series of clever maneuvers and tactics, but a process that can and must transform us." And I think that's at the core of why I think it's important to bring Freedom Dreams in philanthropy, Freedom Dreams to philanthropy.
Yeah. And I want to add to that too, because the work, that last bit that you read, Efrain, must transform us, to name that we are at the 60th anniversary. And I'm very nerdy, so I'm going to do this because it's an arm's reach. It is the 60th anniversary of the American Revolution, Pages from a Negro Worker's Notebook by James Boggs, part of the duo of Grace Lee and James Boggs. And Grace Lee Boggs famously said many, many things. One of the things she famously said is that the work, as we are in capitalism as our economic arrangement, is really about the work of growing our souls. And so that work, when Robin Kelley is speaking about transforming ourselves, I hear in that, just naming lineage, Jessamyn, as you were asking, I hear the work of growing our souls, right? Our work is about growing our humanity that we are all born with the same amount of, growing our humanity in the midst of all of the forces that would tell us that we should be primarily concerned with producing, production, delivering, right, goods, services, and so on. And that is where our value is lies. So this is work that is about growing our souls. It is about work that is meant to fundamentally support us in as we transform ourselves and thereby our practices. That's why freedom dreaming is a verb.
It's coming to my mind that is growing our souls and feeding our hearts. That's what that I was thinking about. But yes.
And I think the thing that's coming up for me is that on many different levels, the work that you are creating spaces for to unfold on many different levels has a significant degree of profundity, whether it is for the individual or whether it is for this practice we call philanthropy right now, whether it is for you know, our ability to create a more just, equitably thriving environment for everybody who is part of our societies. It's really profound work that you're describing, and I can only imagine we're going to have people who are like, how can I go to one of these workshops or be part of this process? And we are going to tell you how to do that, but spoiler alert, you can learn more at the website. But I think just rewinding again to that individual experience, Can you tell us a little bit more about why people decide to participate with this project? Because you've done how many of these interviews at this, well, not interviews, but how many people have gone through the freedom dreaming process?
Oh, they're all research interviews, and
Okay.
just over 25.
25.
Over 25. Yeah. So I'm guessing you don't lead with a full, like, what we've been talking about 20 minutes now of what you just described. But if you did, everybody would be convinced. But as you have been recruiting folks, I would imagine there's kind of a range of reasons that people are interested in participating, and the reason they start participating might not necessarily be the reasons they're glad they participated after the process as well. So tell us a bit about why people participate, but also, like, what does this process come to represent for those leaders who do go through the process?
So we conducted interviews, research interviews, for over about a year for this work, as we were kind of getting it going and really wanting to hear. This work was titled something like Listening to Black, Indigenous, and People of Color CEOs and Presidents in Philanthropy. Right. So the intent has always been to do really deep listening and hear what do people have to say about their freedom dreams for our society. And part of what we heard is that participating in an interview where you're invited to really be at ease, and importantly in this, we guaranteed each person confidentiality in their participation, which is a research norm. So that's important to name. If people who participated choose to share their identities and want to do that, we would welcome it. And we thought it was really important for this early work to provide people with a space and to offer as much as possible a space where people can be brave and less encumbered. And so part of what happened in the space of the interview, we were sitting in a virtual context, not unlike this. So people were often in their homes, sometimes in their physical offices in another kind of building. And we heard things like, this is the best part of my day, or wow, this is so much better than many interviews that I've been a part of. I love this. When are we doing this again?
I believe it.
Right? We had people who said, oh my goodness, like as we get started, I want to be really present with you. So let me take care of this personal need. I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea. Because when I really am settling into conversation, I need to have something warm in my hands, right? And that's going to allow me to be present. I want to be present here. And things like that. We had a number of people also say, how can we be helpful? We want to be helpful. We had people say, let me check and see, I have another meeting coming in. And again, these are CEOs and executive directors of foundations. So we have, so much to say culturally around busyness. We had people say, hold on a second, let me see if I can go for another 15 minutes because I want to ask you a question at the end of this, or I'd really want to, talk about this point a little bit more. So again, this is really coming back to that proof of concept, the desire and the need, we would say. And we're just beginning to really understand wholly how wide and nuanced the desire and the need could be. And so we are in the midst now of our virtual event series for the work. And so there are opportunities for people to, open access, sign up and join us and listen in as we do some of the meaning making together and consider what to do, because work has always been about really collective visions for just futures.
Amazing, Chera.
I would like just to add that it's important to name that this work, sometimes people don't know how to place it because we are intentionally staying away from some of the norms in philanthropy and in capitalism in general. So people are like, what is the packaged product and where is this report? And how are you going to make money? Is this consulting? And it's none of the above. It can be all of the above. We are inviting people to join us in this journey as we start meeting and doing this event series and start to think about where people are, where the energy is, where people want to go with this. I think that's also important to name. And it's challenging because people sometimes get suspicious of like, what do you mean? Like, but no, where is the framework that you're gonna sell for consulting? Like, no, that's not what it is. So I think it's important what Chera mentioned about the fact that we understand that this is a tradition that comes before us and that will continue after us. And that what we want is to for philanthropy to have a space to also be part of it.
It strikes me that we hear people throw around the word or the phrase a place of abundance, or a perspective of abundance, and this, to me, the way I'm hearing it, strikes me as a very practical example of what it means to show up with that mindset, with a true internalized mindset of abundance. And that I think is really helpful as a demonstration of what that can look like. As somebody who's read lots of articles where people are advocating for having an abundant mindset. So thank you for that demonstration on top of everything else. So one thing I wanted to dig into, because the practice of challenging people to dream and reimagine their reality in beautiful, tangible ways is actually something that Vule and Jane Liu and I included in Unicorns Unite, the book that we wrote together. And one of the 3 sections of the book is dedicated to talking about unicorn dreams and kind of illustrating what they could potentially look like. And that process is an exercise that we often do for folks in workshops. And so as I've been part of what I'm sure is a different process to the one that you run, but there are, some foundational similarities there. What I've observed in leading or challenging people to reimagine their own reality is that for most people, it can be incredibly difficult to step out of the environment that they currently exist within, to imagine a future in philanthropy that's more radical than just saying, 100% unrestricted funding, or if every foundation had mandatory spend down policies, that's the future I dream of. But I think what you're asking people to do is to not just picture, but also feel what justice and liberation looks and feels like in philanthropy, that that might include unrestricted funding and spend down in the process of getting there, but it has to be much, much more than that. And so my question in there is, did you experience that there was kind of almost like a shell that you had to break through to crack people open and say, no, we mean actually radical, and if you did, which I'm making an assumption that might have been true, why do you think it is so difficult for us to imagine philanthropy in a radically different way than we have it today? Like, what is it that is so difficult? Maybe this is just human nature, but for people to break free of those limiting beliefs that we largely inflict on ourselves.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go back to this work of growing our humanity, growing our souls, rather, and that this work has to transform us, right? That creating new visions, practicing that. And so I think this is a place to name that as a team, we're a 3-person team. Our third team member is Dr. Trinell Torian, who's a sociologist, Berkeley trained. And we as a team, we are all in our own practices of growing our souls. And as you said, sort of breaking our own limiting beliefs. So we serve as a accountability in a very friendly and collegial way to one another in that. And so it is a pretty strong practice that we have in the way that we work together. That is, for me, different than teams that I have been on in the past. And we all have our own practices too. So for me, for instance, I've been doing somatic experiencing work for the last amount of time, and I years ago, almost 2 decades ago, started a really intentional yoga practice and became a Kripalu certified yoga teacher. And so there are like these practices that are about, for me, finding stillness, about body awareness, somatic awareness that really support my work. And we all have, our ways of continuing to connect there. And then to your question though about limiting beliefs, like why might it be so hard at times for people in philanthropy, since we're there? One is, I think that the way that many philanthropic organizations are set up, there's so much process. I know, Jessamyn, you and Vu and Jane have written about that. There's so much process. And so if you're busy all the time producing, moving through a process, when do you actually have space to imagine anything beyond it or outside it?
Yeah.
If you're so busy all the time that you're looking at a Zoom screen for 8 to 9 hours a day, back to back to back, where is the processing? And where, moreover, is the space beyond that? How could you dream in that?
Yeah.
And then for those of us, I mentioned that I'm a mother, you go right into quote unquote second shift of taking care of your family, taking care of elders, trying to care for yourself in that. Where is the space? So there is a inherent busyness culture, not only in philanthropy, and that philanthropy often has created and overbuilt for itself, that doesn't create much space for anything other than sort of staying in the process is the next thing in front of us. And I think too, another aspect of that is that working in an organizational context with a mission and values and all of that, it can be hard if you are not the CEO or executive director of the organization to say, and I have this thought, dream, feeling, something, inclination that yes, and right, we started talking about the either or. And so, the cultural readiness to listen, to hear people's ideas, feelings, possibilities that might stand with a mission is something that we probably need to make more space for. We started with CEOs and executive directors specifically because we recognize that these are organizations that have hierarchies, and we believed that the CEOs and executive directors actually are best positioned because of the hierarchy to be able to speak and to be on record with their freedom dreams, not because they are the only ones with freedom dreams, or even because leaders have outsized dreams specifically because of their position in an organizational hierarchy. So I think that I should name that too as a misconception here.
Yeah.
It's a strategic move. We made that decision from the start as a strategic move. And certainly now that we are proving the concept, this is work that will invite many, many more people in.
I want to speak directly to folks in philanthropy that might be feeling like, oh my God, how am I going to have the time to freedom dream? And you're asking me these things. I'm honestly, I hear you and I see you. Like your question, Jessamyn, is like, why people can do this because the system is working.
Yeah.
On top of misogyny, racism, late stage capitalism, having to deal, which means the way in which we have to interact with our families and don't have time for anything. The way in which then you put on top of all that the structures of philanthropy that start to make us live in a sense of heartbreak. I think a lot of the people that come to philanthropy come thinking that we're going to do really good work and meaningful work. And then we find ourselves finding that a lot of what's moving the organizations and the work is egos and trying to push agendas instead of really getting into getting the work done. So I don't blame you. But what we're proposing is that despite everything that's happening, there must be a few steps that you can take to start living that freedom dream, where your organization, at least when you're talking to your coworkers, at least when you are treating or doing something with your team, you are centering a different set of values. And you are truly coming together with tenderness, with care, with honesty, and doing the work. So I think the calling is also to start stepping into that freedom dream, not just to imagine this huge thing that we know is not going to happen in our lifetime. Let's surrender to the idea that philanthropy as institution is going to change forever. But we can start to change it now for us and those we interact with, those who have grantees, those who work in communities. And I think that's the way to start freedom dreaming, not just these larger ideas that seem a little more ephemeral, but really stepping into it.
Yeah.
Despite everything that's happening, and I see it and I live it as well.
I appreciate both of your answers because there were a lot of really informed and caring, beautiful reminders in there for the folks who are in it right now, who are like, I'm exhausted, I'm on the edge of burnout, or I don't know how to create space for this, or I don't feel like I have power in my organization. The
It's not
beauty
you.
of what, right.
You should feel like that. Yeah, the system, everything is making you feel like that. Sorry for interrupting.
No, exactly what you said. And I really appreciate what you said, because what you're saying is that there's an entry point for everybody, no matter how close to burnout you feel, or how full your plate is this week, or how how little or how much energy you feel like you have to bring to this. There's a tiny freedom dream. There's a medium size. It's like Goldilocks, right? You find your bowl of freedom dreaming, and I think that's a helpful reminder that it doesn't have to be these lofty, magnificent visions.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of those visions, whatever size they might be, like we are fast running out of time. And as we wrap up, I would just love for you to paint us a quick picture. So you've listened to the dreams and the imaginations of at least 25 leaders in philanthropy now. And I would love for you to just share a snippet of what you've heard. Give us a sense of what are the radical imaginations that you observe, the future states that people are imagining, and maybe how might things look different for leaders of color in philanthropy if we reached some of those visions.
So what's really fascinating about what we heard is that the dreams come back to everybody having the conditions met so that they are able to thrive. So a number of people talked about what would be true: community safety, quality education. People would have enough food to eat. They are the kinds of dreams that are about people moving more toward belonging, about turning toward one another. We asked about if you've seen glimpses of this future, where do you see it? And a number of people could provide some example of like where they see it being closer to being. And those examples largely were happening in very small, which is not surprising, sort of community context where connection, relational belonging, and sort of the sense of you are a part of us was immediately felt, whether they were people who were there for just a short time, or this is a community or place of origin, the sense that you are already enough as you are, and you are part of us, was a through line for these glimpses of the future and where people are seeing this happening, right? And then, interestingly, also there is this question about whether philanthropy, as we understand it, is compatible with a just and multiracial democracy. And overwhelmingly, from leaders of color in philanthropy, we heard, no, it wouldn't be as we understand it today. And I will add the nuance to that to say that doesn't mean that there is no kind of philanthropy as justice, right? If philanthropy means turning toward one another and going back to those roots about love for humankind, right? Our interview participant said, there's a lot of philanthropy, right? But philanthropy as top-down and hierarchical institutions where power is concentrated and there is an either or, you're either a grantee or you're the grantor, as is understood today, so often that would not be compatible with a just and multiracial democracy. And moreover, it wouldn't be needed.
Mhm.
Amen. Yes. I don't know that there's anything I can really add to that. I guess I just really hope that folks who are listening or watching have the chance to interact with this process. Have the chance to try out and derive value from being part of this collaborative in any way, shape, or form. And yes, sadly, we have come to the end of our conversation, but I really want to invite you all to check out more about Freedom Dreams in Philanthropy. The website is freedomdreamsphilanthropy.org. We'll put that in the chat for you. Check out Chera, Efrain's work, subscribe to their social media, subscribe to their newsletter, because that's where you're going to learn about future events that are being hosted. That's where you're going to learn how to get involved. And if you happen to be a white identifying funder who believes in advancing racial justice and are interested in a transformative and immersive cohort experience, please check out camelbackventures.org. We have a cohort called the Capital Collaborative, where our most recent cohort members had this to say about their participation. We've come out of this cohort determined to hold each other accountable for moving things forward, always reflecting, acknowledging when we make mistakes, and continuing to do the work each day to become an anti-racist organization and co-conspirators in the industry. Join us in the cohort to become co-conspirators. And I just want to leave with one more thank you to our expert co-conspirators, Chera and Efrain today. Thank you.
Can I leave us with a quote?
Yes. Please
Ooh,
leave us with a
yes.
quote.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go
I just
ahead.
I have this quote from the late Bell Hooks that I think I want to leave folks with. She says that the moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. And I don't need to say anything else. It's Bell Hooks.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you so much. Chera, thank you. Thank you both for everything you're doing for our industry, our communities, and this funny little corner of the world we call philanthropy, and just being here in conversation with me today. Much gratitude.
Thank you so much to you gratitude to you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for being here today. We'll catch you later.